Question: why are some white men, why are they so easily offended by black people who do their job? Why is it something as simple as saying that their boss is indisposed and you were using the lingo that is used? Why are they so offended and want to fire you that quickly for just saying that? Why, when you're doing your job and you report an incident, why you aren't believed by the white man and you are relieved from your duties and are let go? Why? Why in all this? Why, even with the person by the name of Jeffrey Epstein, why he's able to do things and nothing happened to him initially? And when he was arrested the first time, why was he given more or less a work release program so that he could leave and sexually violate teenage girls? And if it were a black person who is doing something of a lesser degree, why they are hounded, given the stiffest of penalties? Why? Well, maybe the question behind the 20 and back super soldier program, secret space program, maybe this is all about vanity and their own insecurities. Say, you know something? Their behavior is offensive to me. I am offended by their behavior, and I won't stand for it any longer, and I'm going to expose it. So with that being the premise of what you're going to listen to in this audio, please listen to the whole dialogue here. It is eye-opening and food for thought, and maybe is the basis for all these stories that you hear on this genre. So, sit back, relax, get your favorite beverage, and enjoy the show. Good morning, everyone. This is Spirit Journey. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, which was yesterday. The time now is about 4:15 a.m. in the morning. I've been awake now for at least a good hour. My mind is reviewing my researching and examining now what they call the secret space program, the super soldier program. I've been analyzing this genre since about 2016. That's 2016. I had an opportunity. It'll be almost 2 years. I did an interview February of 2018, I think February or early March. I interviewed an individual. And I did the interview. Well, I wanted to do the interview because there were questions that needed to be asked. Again, I was new on the genre, and I decided, I think it was that January of 2018, that I wanted to become someone who took a more active stance and becoming an interviewer of individuals who claim that they have been kidnapped, enslaved in this secret space 20 and back phenomena. The first individual that I heard about was the late Max Spears. I was just fascinated by the whole genre. A young European man, very youthful and strong. And he talked about different things about the what I call the hidden hands of a world that was very, very intriguing to me. Almost like a James Bond type of phenomenon. It's just something like bigger than life, entertaining, because I don't think I really took it seriously. And again, this is not to trivialize those people who are traumatized by their experiences in that genre of the secret space or the super soldier program, the 20 and back. No insensitivity about people who claim that they were victimized by this. In no way do I want to trivialize it. But at the time, okay, my understanding, this is something bigger than life, and is it real? I'm a veteran. I served in the United States Navy in the late 1980s. This was during peacetime or the Cold War era. I'm an American girl, born and raised, and the only sibling that actually entered the military. But things happened to me my whole life. It made me depressed, question life. I was at a standstill in my life. And in 2015, all of 2015, well, I had a paradigm shift, and I shared that with you guys on my channel. I was following a YouTuber, and she had said, if you want to open your pineal gland, start asking questions. And I'm an individual that asks questions. I'm a thinker. But her telling me that it just clicked in my head. Yes, actively start asking questions. And so I just went with it. I was already on the path of questioning, but to just hear it being said, ask questions, it just resonated. I think that's all that I needed at the time. And so by that was like December of 2014. So by when January hit of 2015, I was out and about. And the person had also written a book and made an announcement that they were to have their book in November of 2014. That first week of December 2014, I had gotten the book as well. And the whole paradigm of what her book talked about really shook me. And it shook my current system of belief. So yes, when 2015 hit, I was like in a daze, questioning things. I was very unstable in what's true, what's not true. And so I began my journey, my real spiritual journey. So by 26, so I was on the internet excessively. And I got introduced to the genre of about human consciousness and this new paradigm system, and even ayahuasca. All that came into play. And so when I learned about Max Spears, and he had a companion who also claimed being part of this program of the super soldiers. And again, they don't really like the term super soldiers, but that's what it's known as. So that's the only reason why I'm using that term, because that is the genre term. But these were primarily Europeans, white people, who claim to be have a certain heritage, a bloodline, and due to those factors that a certain group of people want to utilize these people for these programs. These individuals were taken as children, were sexually and physically violated, brought to what they call Montauk, Long Island, New York, and gone through what they call MK Ultra. And I was like very surprised about all this. And then I got introduced to two other individuals. These two other individuals were American. The others were all European. But these two experiences of this phenomenon, being taken as children, were brutalized sexually, physically, mentally, every type of perversion and cruelty were done unto them. But what was interesting about these two Americans, that they used the term that they were slaves. They were enslaved, and they didn't glamorize. They seemed to me more rustic about their experiences. They weren't trying to sugarcoat it. they seemed genuine in their, the emotions. They were emotional and they were angry. While some of the other individuals, they made it seem more like that they were, I don't know, these other people just seemed questionable. Yeah, as I said, they weren't glamorizing it. It was not something glamorized. And I think that appealed to me about wanting to listen to their stories because they made it sound credible. And so I began to extensively listen to these individuals. And my being a person whose Black/African ancestors were slaves and brought here to the Americas, I was captivated by that, by hearing that there are modern day slavery/human trafficking. See, now the term is human trafficked because the term slavery in the Americas it's almost exclusively referring to Black people and people of that race. It puts in visuals in your mind when you hear the term slavery of a strong Black man with no clothes on who looks terrorized and depressed and with heavy chains on them. You think of the movie Roots, all that picture. But now you have what they call human trafficking. And there's a different visual. This term human trafficked, you visualize a white person, white female. They have clothes on. She may look beautiful. Or it might be a young male wearing nice clothing. You don't see the same visual imagery. It also has a glamorized portion to it. But when I heard these other Americans talk about their experience, it just appealed to me to examine further. Moreover to this whole genre, why I decided to examine this phenomenon is because I started to, well, in my examining, and I've mentioned this also. See, you have just a few women out there who are interviewing these individuals. I just really know of one major researcher, and there's two others. One of those women it was someone who was part of that program, and another one who came out maybe in the 1970s, 80s, and became a researcher. But she mostly interviews about space and extraterrestrials, while the two latter came out later. One of the researchers came out maybe 10, 11 years ago about conspiracy theories. Okay? And one day I heard this American researcher, interviewing a man about his experience being a scientist in the world of space travel and all that. And when that person announced that they had seen a photograph of black-skinned people who were at minimum 7 feet tall, this really emotionally shook him up during the interview. And the researcher was very mellow about the whole thing. She was, as an interviewer, trying to gather information. And I have a lot of respect for that individual, that researcher. And then I saw another video regarding that particular interview with the scientist and the researcher on this thing on space and conspiracies. And he was very, very upset and started name-calling the researcher, using such pejoratives against her. And I felt it was unfair and very harsh. And I said to myself, and this is the key, because this interviewer, this person who was criticizing the researcher, who's been around now for maybe 11, 12 years, I said, this person doing the best they can. And again, when you interview someone, this is not an interrogation. She's not a detective and arresting somebody and demanding answers. No, she's a researcher, and she's talking to someone, and that person, other person, is doing her the benefit of even listening to her ask questions. That person doesn't have to answer a damn thing. But I was upset about the harshness of this fellow YouTuber to insult a researcher because they felt that the questions weren't strong enough. They didn't insist on an answer. And the person who was saying these harsh things, again, a fellow YouTuber and a black person, black American person. And I told myself at that point, I said, it's not that many black researchers out there. And if you want an answer to your questions, rather than cursing somebody out because you listened to their video and you didn't like how the interview went. So I decided for myself, I'm not going to be that type of YouTuber and insult people because you don't feel that it wasn't a good enough interview. I want to become an interviewer. So I started really watching videos on the genre, really understanding. And the following month, I wrote down the things I wanted to accomplish that year, who I wanted to interview. Yes, I did. Because I was really hyped up. I said, I don't want to be like that other YouTuber, insulting people and potty mouth. I'm going to be an interviewer. I'm going to interview people directly, and so that I will become informed directly. And if you want to know something, ask the person. Don't get potty mouth. This is not about an entertainment scene. See, a lot of us black people on YouTube who may follow about space and all this, we're really passive. We like to be entertained. Entertain me. That's the mentality some of the YouTubers out there, black YouTubers. They criticize, they say all these bad things about people who are actively pursuing answers. Well, I'm not going to be one of those type of YouTubers. I want to be an active participant and ask questions. So, I reached out to 2 people actually. And I feel also very strongly, because I'm an outsider, I'm of a different race, I'm a black woman, born and raised in the United States of America, and I'm a veteran of the United States Navy. So, I reached out to 2 of the people who claimed that they were, the term they use, that they were enslaved. And I reached out to them on Facebook. Now, I'm not a heavy Facebook person, but I have an account, and I messaged 2 of them. And I got a response from both, but only one of them decided to be interviewed. The other one just responded, I'll think about it. So this person that decided to be interviewed by me, I shared with them. Since I don't know this person, I've never met them, but I watched their many interviews extensively and would write notes on the videos that I saw, the interviews that this person did. And again, because I'm an outsider, he doesn't know me. He's never heard of me. He never spoke to me before. So in this initial introduction, I give my name. I mention about my channel, and that most of the people who watch my channel are other black people, and that I wanted to, to discuss this whole experience that he had in the 20 and back through a black perspective. And I shared with him my background. So he has an option now, based on what I share with them, whether he'll be even interested. But I put my cards on the table. I feel, you're approaching someone you don't know, like an open book. I presented who I was. It's like knocking on somebody's door and you want something from him, in this case, an interview. Well, you knock on that door, you better present yourself, let the other person know who you are, and to be very respectful. And so that's where it began. And we had an interview. And so I want to talk about in this audio my feelings about this whole genre. And I hope I'm able to really get out what's really on my mind and present it in an understandable format. The Secret Space program. Okay, everything's really going to be on my perspective and understanding as an adult, as a veteran, just my perspective. Now, this genre I've been studying now since 2016. So it's 3 years now. And my interview is almost 2 years ago. What questions do I have about this whole thing? Well, you learn about that there are people out there who come from different backgrounds, but what they all seem to have in common is that most of them are men. But you do have a lot of women. And almost all of them are exclusively white or white Europeans. Many of them seem to have O negative blood, I notice. And I was targeted in a restaurant because I said that people who are in this program tend to have O negative blood. And I shared that story a few times on my channel. I was with an individual. We were talking about paranormal and the super soldier secret space program for about 2 hours. But the point when I got targeted at the restaurant, I had just mentioned, that's what I was physically saying, that I know of people who are O negative and that their children are O negative. And then something interfered with my energy body, and I felt physically weak. And then I heard, like, in my head, a faint voice of them saying, if I can remember right, something like, "I'm sick and tired of hearing you talk about." That's all that I remember. And then something hit my heart, something energetic made my heart start to race uncontrollably. I went to the ER. They did tests. They did see that I had what they call tachycardia, means irregular heartbeat, and it was beating very fast and strong. I mean, very, very stressed. I was there for maybe 2 hours. They said, your heart's, calm down. You're free to go now. You stabilize. That next morning, severe earache and diarrhea. I didn't tell the hospital that I thought I heard a voice in my head, a quiet voice, but it was yelling. It was an angry American accent female voice. So this whole genre is really personal to me now. That incident happened last year in May 2018. So this is real to me, this whole subject. I felt violated when that happened. And so I take the matter very seriously and wonder what is really behind this genre. Is this really a real genre? For something to be that angry with me, to talk about O negative blood. So there's something strong about this subject and O negative. Why was I even listened to? Why was I followed? This was just a random day out to a restaurant. I had no plans on going there. I had no idea that this other person was going to visit, contact me and want to go out. It was just a random activity of that day. And it really makes me question even more this incident about the 20 and back, super soldiers, secret space genre. It's really having me ask questions. So here you have people who claim that they were human trafficked. See, that's the 21st century term, human trafficked, not enslaved. What's really going on? Who is really controlling this or these events? What do they get out of it? You don't need... Why do you need people? There are plenty of people who want to work and do things. Plenty of people who love to travel and travel in space. So why, when I look on YouTube, why is it what it appears? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? Why, when you discuss certain topics, it offends people? Why? You start wondering, what are you talking about, Spirit Journey? The subject of race. See, again, when I did my interview almost 2 years ago, I presented the fact that of what I was and through a black perspective. Why in this genre, why don't you have more black subjects discussing this matter? Why the people who are selected, why is it that they are almost exclusively white people? You have to ask yourself these questions. Because, see, if it's about labor, labor is labor. And labor was so important in history 600 years ago, and that they selected a demographics to do this extensive labor. Okay? The transatlantic slave trade / human trafficking. Now, what is modern day trafficking all about? Well, when you focus on Jeffrey Epstein, the man who was arrested for human trafficking teenage girls, and all of them that you hear about, all of them are white females. Why is that? Why was it in the past, in the 1500s, that who was being human trafficked were extensively black slaves, black people who were kidnapped? Primarily they came from the West Coast. Millions of people were stolen, kidnapped, human trafficking to Europe, to the Americas, extensively, and it lasted for several hundred years. But now you have this human trafficking, and virtually you don't hear anything about blacks in Africa or blacks from the Americas. Not everything you hear about are Europeans, white people. I even saw in New York City what do you call it? People who were marching. And this was a march against human trafficking. They had signs. They had tape across their mouth to symbolize that they're not supposed to talk, that they were forbidden to talk. They also wore all black. And virtually all these people were white people, white women, and you had men also. Just a handful, one or two blacks did I see in this whole thing on human trafficking. So, on YouTube, in this genre, all these other people are also whites and Europeans. They are being taken as children. That's all of them seem to say that they were children and brutalized. I even asked the person that I interviewed, why is this such? Why aren't there a lot of blacks in this? Because I'm thinking, in my perspective, well, you talk about labor, blacks have always been used for their labor with regard to Europeans or white people. So why are they not being utilized in all this? They're not being part of it. It's a question that I have. And the answer I was given was that, well, black people is harder to mentally control them as white people, and that it'll be too expensive to do. So I asked myself, is that the answer? Well, if black people were that hard to mentally control, but every day black people are being controlled via television, the news, newspapers, music, we're all being manipulated mentally. And you look at the prisons. Now, if black people weren't easily controlled, there'd be no black people, I think, in prison. Okay, yes, you have whites who are in prison, but in comparison, percentage-wise of a demographics, black people outnumber, percentage-wise, white people. So how are blacks being mentally controlled? Through those things I just mentioned. And physically controlled by setting up laws that target the social atmosphere of black community. Laws like 3 strikes laws, and then you're in there for life. So you mess up 3 times, what's that, 3 felonies or 3 something, and it can be trivial. You're in there for life. So there are laws and social systems that are created against blacks in the Americas to become the candidates for prison. Well, what are you going to do in prison? Now I'm thinking the kidnapping ring, the trafficking. Wouldn't you want to utilize a group that you have unlimited supply? They're strong. They have higher endurance for pain. And historically, blacks have been used by whites to do many different tasks. And if they're in prison, what are you going to use them for? Well, that's what I'm thinking where the secret space comes from. This secret space program was going to utilize, because again, the 13th Amendment, to abolish slavery, but you become a slave and can be utilized as a slave once you get put in jail. You lose all rights. So I also come from the military. I'm a veteran. And I notice that there's a high proportion of black people in the military. So you have a secret space program of super soldiers, and if most of the people, but the highest percentage, not the number, not the quantity, but percentage wise, many are black people, black men. So that is the perspective that I ask these questions, because it doesn't make sense to me. And that's the element in all this genre that I really have a question about. Its legitimacy. That is this really the truth? But instead you see who you see. You see white men and white females. And they do various assignments. The person I interviewed did what they call stores. You know, they're in charge of inventory, things, supplies going in and out. And in the military, the regular military, you have that. And you can have any race doing this. And then you have those who go to what they call assassins. So I'm thinking all these things shouldn't really require a particular race to do. But for some reason you have this. So I asked the person who I interviewed about their experience when they're out there. Did you see any black people? And out of my 4-hour minus 5-minute interview, that was the only thing that seemed to trigger a response from that individual that was uncharacteristic in comparison to everything that we discussed. The person seemed uncomfortable. And so, and that they responded, well, okay, let's go there. And there were black people. So I wanted to really clarify that we understood what I meant by black people. So I specified, I said, I mean people, black people, like from Africa, black Africa, West Indian people, American blacks, these type of people. I'm not meaning people from India, Pakistan, Pacific Islanders. I mean black people, black American people. So I don't know why this seemed to, I sense agitation. Why? Why did I feel this tension? And I had since watched my interview and that segment of the interview when I asked about race. It didn't have the same punch, but when it was being said, and this is what I felt. The person said, and I spoke to them more than one occasion about this. You know, the initial interview, and I think I might have talked to them outside of it too. But either way, They said that when they were on their way back from the 20-year back, when they're doing the back part, when they're being retrieved back to for them to reverse his age or something, they're on some craft, and there was an adult man with them. First, I'm told that he was a black person, and he's the one that actually advised them, look, you're on your way back. They have to, by law or something like that, that they have to send you back. So you can say and do anything, and you won't get in trouble, because they have to bring you back. And I thought that was interesting. But then it turned out that this person was not a black person, but someone from Asia. And then he mentioned about a little child, because I was really trying to go further with it. Because you're doing your way for 20 years, you got to experience something about different types of people. So he mentioned about a young child, a very, very young child. And they were upset, they were sad, this child, and this was a black child, he mentioned. They mentioned, the person who I interviewed mentioned about there are all types of people out in space. All different types of creatures and everything, all different colors. And I felt that, why do I sense like there's a wall about discussing this? For me, it's just pretty straightforward. Did you see any black people or not? And it's a term that's easily understood. But then at another interview with this person on that I interviewed, and it was a recent interview that was done in 2019, he offers that. And it's with this same individual that he discusses when he was on his way back from the 20 and back. He said, oh yeah, and he was a black person. So it's either he was a black man or that he was an Asian. So that was only that really stood out. And why is it such an issue? It was as if, okay, let me just offer that information. Why is it a secret? Why is the secret space program seem to be secretive when it comes to black people? Okay? We all know what black people look like, or a light-skinned black person. Why is it that so few of us are even discussing this? I only know of one black man, or actually two black people. One is someone who discusses more about ET experiences, and the other one is biracial, and his mother's white, father is black. Both are American, and he's the only one that's specifically saying that he was part of this secret space program. So I'm a little confused, people, about that. Here you have this man. He's would be classified as a black person or a biracial person of black heritage, right? And he's in this program. So I'm also wondering why that individual, why that only, so it's only really one black person that's specifically stating that he was part of this super soldier program. Why is that? Why is he the only one that I know of? But it's never question deeper. Now, I'm talking through a perspective of someone who's been in the military, and in the military, blacks stay with blacks, and whites stay with whites. In general. In general. So if you're going to bring on this black or biracial individual, they'll be with other people. Because, see, people are social. But you don't hear of any dialogue or anything about experiences with him and with other black people. Because, see, race is an issue. Race is always an issue. But why is it hidden? Why is it not discussed? Why, when I asked the person that I interviewed about it, why is it like an issue about terminology? And that it's like, who's he really referring to? Is this a black person he's talking about, or someone with dark skin? An ET? So this is a question I have. And I ask this question also because you have a lot of people, a lot of black American people who are missing. Children that are missing. Adults that are missing. And at the time when the person that I interviewed was kidnapped / human trafficked, was the Child Atlanta killings or missings. This was something that occurred from 1979 to 1982 around in a specific area of Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America. All these black children. Where did they go? They still don't know where these kids are. They pinned it on this one guy, this whole missing black people, children. He was actually, they only got him on the killings of 2 adults. There's no DNA or evidence about the children, but there was a link with 2 adults. So he's convicted for the whole thing. I think he was a fall guy. He might have been involved in something, definitely. But did he actually kidnap those children? See? What's really going on? People are being used for something, and children are being used for something. And if it's about military, blacks historically, black Africans historically have always been used by whites and Arabs, and still in their military. You look in Saudi Arabia, those people who are being used as guards, look very closely what these people are. Okay? Look very closely at what they look like. You look in the United States, who are in the military, percentage-wise. Who's overrepresented in the U.S. military? Black people. So now you got a secret space program, super soldiers, okay, 20 and back. But you see us not represented in the discussion when there is a, what do you call, not convention, when they do a talk, a discussion. You don't see them represented. You don't see them. Why is that? Why is this whole genre dominated by white men? I asked myself those questions. And then I asked myself the question about this copywriting. I think it was earlier this year. You have one of the guys who does extensive talks about his experience, the 20 and back and these ETs, that they're going to copyright the term 20 and back and some other genres, Blue Avian. Why is this? This is getting ridiculous. So I'm thinking, how legitimate is this genre? You get a white man who wants to copyright a term. When you copyright it, you are saying ownership. Why is this man feeling that he needs to copyright a term and thus possess it and thus could make money off of it? This is questionable to me. This adds question to me about the legitimacy of this whole genre. See, it's becoming so much more hyped up, and more people are being attracted into this genre to even have conventions and, well, not convention, but this discussion where you meet in a central area. That means you have to book a hotel, that you're going to have people who are going to maybe sell items, right? You have people who sell products, T-shirts, things to help you meditate and clear your mind and trauma. You have that. And they're all white people, and they're making it into a business. How could you make something like this into a business when this is all about human trafficking? People who are relating their human traffic experience. Whether you're being used as a super soldier, you're saying that you were taken as a child, raped, drugged, tortured, satanic ritual abuse, right? And now you go on the interview circuit and discuss it. You get invited to go on different television programs and share about your experiences. And even now want to copyright certain terminologies. And so how could this be so legitimate? How could this be legit? I really am asking questions. Why is it that when I asked about race, why are they upset? Why did they get visibly upset? I have a theory. See, if you have an individual who wants to copyright a term, they create a genre. It's a story. Just like you have people who want to be noticed. They don't act traumatized. Okay? They don't act like somebody who's been through hell and back. They wouldn't stand for something like this. Someone who's been violated like that, you're gonna, and again, this is about experiences. It should be an outrage. Say, what? You want to market my pain and suffering? This is not a laughing matter. You have to start thinking, people. Maybe why it's a sensitive issue of race and black people specifically, because maybe in their story of the super soldier, secret space, 20 and back, this is a genre that was possibly crafted behind closed doors by white people, and they didn't figure you in the mix. They didn't put it in the script. And so when you ask a white person that was in the program or alleges they had these experiences, it gets them unstable. It makes them uncomfortable. And so you have to really start evaluating, why would this make them uncomfortable? Well, why does race make white people uncomfortable? I don't know. But maybe they have something to hide. See, when you ask about race, then you're talking about what's going on behind closed doors. You talk about accountability of someone being affected by somebody else. You're talking about secret meetings. You're talking about the intent behind someone's actions that will be exposed when you ask them questions. Things have to be brought to light on a matter. But they're afraid. And, I was afraid too. I was afraid to ask about it. Because historically, when you discuss race to a white American, this makes them uncomfortable. Well, why does it make them uncomfortable? Well, it makes some uncomfortable because they're doing things behind your back. In a nutshell, let's keep it real. You have people who claim that they're being targeted into something. But common sense is telling me that if it's a matter of who is brainwashable, and you're going to say white people are more brainwashable than black people, so that means it's showing that much of a threat that black people are to whites, right? So wouldn't it be the attack more? Because again, the bulk of black people in the Americas are all individuals who were human trafficked and violated in such ways, so many ways, for hundreds of years. They weren't using white people in the Americas to the same degree as blacks. So they're going to focus on focusing on white people to do all these elaborate experiments to control them to use in some activity. When in reality, black people are being targeted every day through various mind traps. Every day, you get any black person living in the United States of America, especially if they're born and raised here, and especially if they're here for generations, they are being brainwashed, socially controlled. Okay? So this proves to me that the reason behind us not being in this thing, because we cannot be brainwashed, and so it doesn't fit. Okay? And historically, we are still being used at a higher degree, military, also the correctional services in the United States. So all these things is showing that we are being used. I want to know, where are we? We're becoming missing. We're missing. Where are we going? Where are we going? We're being hidden. And you have this genre of people who are saying these horrific things that are happening to them. And then here, when you ask about it, and when you're a black person asking about it, but why? Why was the interview I was to do, why was it withheld? Not withheld. Why was it rejected in the last minute? Why is it a question whether something is going to be aired live or Google Hangouts, because that's what I used before, Google Hangouts of YouTube. It was a successful video. Why did they back out at the last minute? I asked myself that question. I shared with this person about things that happened to me since the interview that I did, the first interview. And why did it make a difference it being live? Well, when something is potentially a live stream, see, then the person may feel that they have to be very careful what they say. And maybe having something that's pre-recorded gives them a sense of safety, of being asked certain questions. I mean, a question is a question, whether a question is done live or pre-recorded. So I start to think, why would this make, you ask yourself that question, people. What would make someone afraid to be on a live stream? If this individual has done live shows, discussions, then they're not shy. So what am I getting at? What it sounds like. What does it sound like to you people who are listening to this audio? What does it sound like to you when someone doesn't want to be taped live? Okay? So this puts question to me on the validity of what this person is saying. That is the issue. That is my issue here. You have a whole planet. Things are global. Now you have allegedly technologies of so many kinds. You wouldn't have just one type of people. See, I also have a science background. And so I've learned to ask certain types of question and reasoning. You having a program where they're going to have to send people up in space, I start to think, okay, you need genetic variability. If you're going to have a colony or workers, you should have people of diverse backgrounds, because you're going to be exposed to different variables, different environmental conditions that could work havoc against that organism. And so genetic variability is very important in any type of program, because then this is leaving you very, very vulnerable in warfare. Because your enemies, because we all have enemies, your enemies are going to find that weak spot and say, hey, they only have such and such a variable. Well, that could be used against them. And then boom, they can do a strategy of warfare against that specific group, thus leaving them to vulnerability and destruction. But they're just saying, well, we just need them to have O negative or a Rh negative blood type. They all have to have blue eyes. They all have to be Caucasian. If that's the case, you can just do a genetic map on those individuals, find their weak spot in those genetic traits, and use a weapon of warfare against them and wipe out the whole program. So that is my one of my points about this, that's making me feel, is this really a real program? I mean, yes, there is MK Ultra. There are records that were classified that now is unclassified, so we have access to those documents. And you have that individual, that scientist, is an engineer who was invited to some base, and there were photographs of these very tall, extremely dark-skinned black people of some type, minimally 7 feet tall, minimum height of 7 feet. And so I asked myself this question. You have a man, a scientist, who shares that information with an interviewer. Why is it being held back? And that's also expressed in that YouTuber, that black YouTuber, who was angry at that interviewer for not digging deeper about the subject of black ETs. And that's what also brought me to become an interviewer on the subject of this super soldiers, secret space, 20 and back genre. You have a base and they have photographs of these things. How come then If this is, that was out in the open in this base of its existence, but yet you have people who are in this, who claim to have experiences in this, but they don't talk about it. They seem afraid. Why are white people afraid to talk about it? This is the other secret. Why? Why are blacks still being targeted by white people? Why? Why are we overrepresented in prison system? Why is this? Why is it that in black neighborhoods, why there's you feel like an energy, and you see the behaviors of the people who are committing acts of violence upon themselves? It seems to heavily suggest to me that we are being mentally controlled by outside forces. And you have these black ETs that do exist. They had the photo. He never made mention of photos of white people, white ETs. I've never heard him say it. Never. But he said specifically, and he seemed extremely fearful. So I asked myself, are there such things as what they call the Nordics ET race? Why are the Nordics romanticized, yet they are, you hear them, people being examined, kidnapped, probed, and yet they are seen to be worshipped by other white people, like it's their God, their white God. You've never heard of black ETs kidnapping, raping, probing, dissecting white people. But yet you have white people, white scientists, white people who have access to enter these bases on this planet and seem to be extremely fearful. See, it's a reverse. It's a reverse, people. Reverse in logic. Why are you going to worship a white ET because they have blonde and blue eyes, tall? Look at the thumbnails on YouTube of ETs. These white-looking ETs. Look at them very closely. They're usually always white females, and they look sexual. And it's like a sexual allure to appeal to you, that they are goodly and safe to be around. Okay? But yet these are the ones that are doing all the kidnapping, torturing of other white people. Yet you have all these black people who are missing, and black people who are they have to be experimented on in some time, because you look at how they act. Black against black crime in major cities. We weren't like this. We were not like this. We weren't like this in slavery, killing ourselves like this on the plantation. But why now? We had communities. They were thriving after slavery in the United States. And then, boom, things changed. Things changed, and we were forcibly moved out of our homes via terrorism by hate groups, by people who wore white sheets over their heads and terrorized men, women, and children. This is a reality, and this is in our history. So you're saying with all this is a type of brainwashing to mentally control you to do things, to mentally control you to leave where you're living, where you're familiar with, and force us to live in urban centers. And then the acting out, and then being overrepresented now in the military. And then with all the genre, you don't hear anything about us. You have in all this genre one black person who's of mixed ancestry. They have a white mother and a black father. Okay? That's the only person. And then there's one other black fellow who really focuses on his ET contactee experiencer. And he has like gray eyes. So either you have to be accepted, you either have to have these gray eyes or light eyes or have a white mother. This is really very interesting. Is this by design? Is this something to question about white men's psyche? That even in this genre, that they still are excluding us of being heard. Why are we being excluded in the discussion plate? Why, when I presented to do a second interview, why did it close at the last minute? I didn't turn down the interview. They contacted me and made the excuse. See, I had said something. See, I thought everything was good to go. And that, why were they offended? Why did they become offended when I mentioned about them being the first interview? That they were the first person that I interviewed, I should say. Why would this upset a white person? I asked myself this question: why would that upset you so much? The things that I told to black people in general is offensive. Why are they so easily offended by people like me? I'm a respectable person. I'm very courteous to people who I talk to. I felt I handled this person with kid gloves, gently. Why does it offend people that they were the first person I interviewed? So you start to wonder, that is this a game, this interview, this whole genre to who's going to talk to who, really a genre about popularity? I thought it was about doing research and being active participant in asking people, experiencers, the right question to try to figure out what's going on in this genre. Why are you so offended and easily offended? Of all the stuff that has happened to you, you're going to get angry at being the first person that I interviewed, even though it is the longest video that I could find on YouTube, 4 hour minus 5 minute interview. I have, let's see what else. Some of the channels that this person was interviewed on, they have less subscribers. They have less longevity than I have. So I was there longer on YouTube, the longest video on YouTube, and more viewers, all three categories, than their latter interviews. The only thing that really stands out is what I am, which again is excluding my influence on this genre. Why is that? The same reason why you're shut out in everything else, even outside of this genre. That's the only answer and common sense in all this. This is a market. The super soldiers, secret space, 20 and back seems to be reminiscent of a man-made event to stimulate popularity and to generate income. Could it actually be real in some aspects? Maybe. But the reasoning, just like the reason behind the last interview not being done, it had nothing to do with it being a live interview. It was already done live before. Google Hangouts live. No, Google Hangouts on air. It was done pronto. No editing. Just as is. Boom. What you see is what you get. So again, it's like something wanted to be controlled. A controlled genre. When something is live, then it's not controlled. Why do some individuals want to control the 20 and back? The super soldiers, the secret space. It's all being controlled by white men primarily. This whole genre of control. People are even making movies, right? The Jason Bourne series. Now it's a TV series. Okay? All these things. See, some things are just things being controlled. And when you control things, you rule them. And in this rulership, what they're telling me by their behavior, it's all about behavior. It's not about race, it's about behavior. And this behavior that I have experienced a little over a month ago, when I was rejected, was an excuse. The excuse was, oh, I was concerned about it being live. Well, I said that it doesn't have to be live. And as for time, they had the power all along of time. They decided what time and day. So that shouldn't have been an excuse. And it being live, you already done a live one. You're not camera shy. You've been in conferences. We have many people in the audience. So what is it? Why and who is controlling? Is someone controlling him? See, now I'm offended. I am offended. I'm offended because that I'm an honest individual. I'm a seeker of truth. I question things and I want to understand what's happening in my life. And I shared with that same person of an incident that a dream that I had. It was like I was half awake, half asleep, about the Germanic woman slash scientist who was doing some experiment on me, and wanting me to allow this animal to devour me. It was really bizarre, and the first time that ever happened to me. Unreal. Very bizarre. So I believe that there are things and science being done on many types of people. But why is it that when it comes to Black people wanting to examine what's going on in this world, why are we excluded from the table of discussion? And the only Black people that you see in this discussion are someone who has a white mother, someone with light eyes, and that's it. I haven't seen anyone else who was invited to these meetings. So it's very questionable. The whole thing is very questionable. The validity. See, it's a genre that seems to be created by white men, and they haven't factored in yet the Black people aspect. And they thought by saying, well, Black people cannot be MK Ultra'd as readily, and so it's going to be more expensive to do this to them, so they just focus on white people. See, that's a very easy explanation, and I see holes through it because we are being programmed now. Just look at us. You think the behaviors that we do, that you see out there in the media, you don't think that's being controlled by outside forces? We're being thrown in prisons. And what is prison? You become a slave once you enter the prison system, says the 13th Amendment. You have all these missing Black people. Where are we going? Also, to state, like the person that I did interview was in charge of storage. One thing that I noticed with like being for the military, when you bring on cargo, you have to have inventory. You have to have a list. You have to know what's coming in and coming out. Okay? Now they say, well, we had to keep everything in the boxes. And remember, they said it wasn't labeled. Well, you have to label something. Everything have to be labeled. Okay? You have to know what you're carrying. And still, you have to account for, like, they might say, okay, they kept it from us. Those items that are going to be used exclusively outside, you're just a go-between. Well, what about the supplies that are on the ship that's going to be consumed? Okay, uniforms, food. What else? Cleaning supplies, toilet paper, all these things, see? You have to account for these things. But you don't hear of this. And you're going to have people who's going to do these things. Now, when I was in the military, who primarily on the ship, I lived and worked on the ship, a naval ship, a destroyer tender. Who do you see doing these works? Black people. Okay? But they say they don't see anybody. There's nothing accounted for in all this. You're going to need someone who's going to mop the floors. See, this is military. And as the person I talked to almost 2 years ago, that all Germans. Okay? So this is a racial component. Germans. Well, they're very systematic Germans. Okay, and that's not a racial slur, and I don't mean it as such. You're dealing with military people, and I've been in the military. Everything is accounted for. Everything. You also have the quality assurance people. You have to have people, what they call, you have these inspections, and you have to do this extensive cleaning. Things don't get cleaned by themselves. People have to clean it. So you have to have time when people have to do these cleaning and last for hours. He never discusses that. It's never discussed. Okay? People have to wash dishes. Who, when I was in the military, who did the washing of the dishes? Okay? Black people. Yes, that white people do it. But who do it as a job? Like they entered the military to do kitchen work. It is the most grueling work imaginable. And part of your initiation in the military, you do kitchen work. Okay? So you have to have people preparing the food. Okay, conveniently they say they got machines that materializes food. Okay. Now, does the thing have packaging? Who made the machine? Okay. The things that they sleep on has to be made by somebody. And who made those beds? Or who repaired them? Black people. Okay. You have to get supplies like shampoos, soaps. Who does the cleaning of the shower room? See, sometimes they get so like, oh, well, they have this fancy machine that does that, that cleans about the. Okay, who does their laundry? Who does laundry? Okay, you don't need someone with a high IQ to do laundry, right? So who's going to do that? See, so you have to have, that's section. See this, the super soldier secret space 20 and back seems to avoid this discussion topic. Everything's convenient about, oh, we got this machine that prepares the food like a microwave that you just press a button and it materializes the food. Oh, you got this special toilet well, someone has to clean it out. The heads. You think these people are going to just stay clean? Hair's going to be all over the place. Right? Europeans have to wash their hair every day. The hair goes down the drain. It got to go somewhere. Right? All these things. sleepwear, the bedding, all these things. Where they get their supplies from? Where they get their soap from? Toothbrush, toothpaste. All this has to be maintained, but it's never discussed. So you're going to have a population that's going to have to live on that ship somewhere and do that work. And these people will have to, when there's free time, they'll all go out with each other. When I was in the military, these genres of people, these people, they partied together. They work together, they leave the ship, they party, they come back on. So you have to see them when they leave and come aboard. You have to see them. See that? It's all a secret. And so in my interview I did almost 2 years ago, the 4-hour minus 5-minute interview I did, I asked about, what black people did you see? What were they doing? Where were they from? All of a sudden, there's a problem. But when they did another interview, they offered that interview. Oh, there was a black guy. But when I talked to them about it, it later was said that they were Asian. See, you have to get your story ironed out, really ironed out, white people. So I'm starting to think you are inventing a genre to increase popularity, money making. Because then you're going to do your interviews, you're going to write your books. But you have to consider there are people who have been in the military. And you're going to have black people like myself who have been in the military. And they have their perspective because of what they are and what type of jobs that they have designated for black people. And you forget that, white people and white men. Okay? You have people who are listening and listening intensely. And they have their experiences and they have their logic. And your stories are, I find, problematic. It's becoming problematic. And I'm wondering how valid it really is, especially when it comes to race. And again, and I repeat, the only person that really discussed anything about Black ET that possibly has access was that scientist. I think his name's Bergram. And he offered that information. Okay? And the interview he did, there's most of the interviews on that individual were edited. But there is an unedited one on the internet. You have to listen to the unedited one because the edited one makes it appear that that they didn't want to discuss it. It just left you hanging. But you have to see the whole video and get the full perspective on it. The person wasn't, the interviewer wasn't hiding or, it has a different perspective, excuse me. So listen to the whole interview, not the edited version of it. So this Bergman made mention. He's the only one that openly, and he has access to thing because he was a scientist. And he was about 90 years old. He has a book out and he researched the data that was provided him. And he just saw it because he was invited to this base and he saw photos. So black people do exist. And these black people frighten this white individual to such a degree, yet you don't hear anything about it in the 20-year super soldier secret space genre of discussion. And not even the person that I interviewed made mention of these people. Yet he's on all these bases, had access to supplies coming in and off the ship, but yet it's not discussed. And you find also in this genre that it seems like they're all connected somehow. They go to the same talks, conventions or whatever. The same people. And they interview each other. Back and forth. Back and forth. And so they create work for themselves. They only interview and talk to people who they know. See, I'm an outsider. They don't know me. But see, these people are friend interviewing a friend. So they're going to support each other and they're going to support their story. Okay? What they're selling a story. And even some of them say, hey, I remember you, I saw you on such and such planet. Yeah, that's a ticket. I remember you too. Right? Have you heard that, people? And these people only seem to interview each other and become guests on their talk shows. Does this sound legit to you, people? My people? Any people? Does this make sense to you? See, I'm an outsider, a seeker. And over a month ago, I was excluded from doing this interview because something flustered this individual, and the excuse they gave me doesn't hold water. You've done a live interview, and the longest out there on the internet, with me, yet you don't want to do it now. Oh, something happened. Well, you had the control all along of the date and time. You could have just rescheduled. And I said, whatever was convenient for you. But yet they had two interviews. Two interviews in a week period, 1 to 2 week period. So how is it that they were able to do it with them, white people, and were they as courteous and unconfrontational as I was? Or were they more confrontational? See, it doesn't hold water again. It doesn't hold water. And only thing I could just, ask myself is, were they afraid? Were they afraid for me to discuss about black people? Because again, it's always through a black perspective to teach my viewers, because most of my viewers are black people. And that's what I told them. Maybe they were afraid for me to discuss that. Because it can't be because you're being camera shy, because you've done live shows. It's just on You're going to be in the comfort of your own home. And it could be done just not live. Easy. You just could have just said it right then and there. I don't want to do a live one. Let's just do a pre-recording. That's fine. They never contact me back. Why? But they've done several interviews since then. So again, it's the exclusion of me, because I am not an insider of their protected genre of discussion. I am an outsider, and I am a black woman. So it's telling me, you're not wanted, and we don't want you to discuss or ask us questions. So I invite other black women, black men, to start interviewing these people on the Super Soldier Secret Space and the 20 and Back. Because blacks are being abducted, kidnapped, and historically and still being used by white people to do things that do not help us as a group. We're overrepresented in jail. We're overrepresented in the military. It's there. And in the military, certain jobs, at least when I entered the military, who was doing these jobs that are grunge work jobs, who were primarily used to do this? Black people. Yet we're not being discussed. Yet we're not being invited in the round table of discussion. Only when you are invited by them. That's what it looks like to me. But I introduced myself to them. And when I came back to do a follow-up, see, before I came back, everything was cool. They told me that they liked my interview. They said about the post-interview I did was really good. Some of the questions that I posed. They were never offended, but now they are offended. He was offended when I mentioned that he was my first interview. So now I'm not important enough. I'm not good enough. Yet, in all rationality, I was supreme to the other interviews. But yet, I'm no longer good enough to be spoken to be interviewed, but yet other people are. See, other people, other white people, aren't going to be interested about black people. And I am. I'm authentic. I am authentic. And so whether or not they ever be interviewed by me or not, or come to me, they're going to get an authentic person asking them questions. And so this is just a reminder that even out in space, in just inquiring about certain subjects, certain people are excluded from the round table of discussion. And it's the same thing. So this is just food for thought about my thoughts about the the holes that are starting to reveal itself to me about this whole genre. Is it real? Or is this fiction to provide white people streams of income, books, copyright terms? Who's going to research the real questions? What's really going on? What's really going on in the Black community, with Black people, with Native people of planet Earth? What is happening to us? And why was I targeted at the restaurant over a year ago, last year, 2018 in May, when I asked about the O negative blood type? This is really food for thought. I thank you guys and gals. So you too, go out there, become an interviewer, and become informed. Don't insult those people who are genuine in their approach of wanting to ask questions, especially if you're a member of the Black race. Become an interviewer and start asking questions, and you too will discover, like I did. This discovery really leads to real questions and real exclosure. We call it exclosure. I thank you again for listening. And if you like my content, feel free to subscribe, share this audio tape with friends, family members, and yes, to donate to my channel. Just go on to my channel, Spirit Journey, and on the banner towards the right, you see my PayPal me link. Just click on it and follow the prompt. Any amount would be greatly appreciated. And so you want an authentic person to sponsor, you can sponsor me. I thank you again. Let us be genuine in our approach, and to fear not when you feel the resistance. Keep on keeping on, people. I thank you all. Bye-bye.